Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at Barnes& Noble's Midday Mystery event. I'm Ashley Winstead. I'm still catching my breath from that beautiful video. It's fabulous. So I'm Ashley. I'm the author of thrillers such as In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, The Last Housewife, which is right here above me, and most recently, This Book Will Bury Me. And I am thrilled to be joined by the woman of the hour, the lovely Eva Jurczyk, who is the author of the brand new book, 640 to Montreal. There we are in all her glory, which we are here to celebrate. And if you haven't heard the news, 640 to Montreal was announced as a Barnes& Noble monthly pick for November. So Eva, first off, congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I should apologize to everyone right off the bat. This is what I sound like today. It's not usually what I sound like. So let's all go on this journey together.
I love it. You're mysterious, you're
Oh,
smoky. I mean, like you fit the part of a mystery writer. And thank
oh,
you so much for doing this with us with almost losing your voice. Thank you. That's amazing.
thanks so
Okay. So, just to give you a super brief run of show, I'm going to formally introduce Eva, and then she and I are going to talk for roughly 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to ask her my questions about her writing and her new book, and then we're going to turn it over to the amazing audience questions that y'all submitted ahead of this show. So, they're so good. Can't wait to get to them. Okay, so without further ado, Eva Jurczyk is the international best-selling author of The Department of Rare Books and Special Collections, That Night in the Library, and now, of course, 640 to Montreal. She was born in a mining town in Poland and wound up halfway around the world in a Canadian city that often masquerades as New York in the movies, which is so cool. As her day job, Eva buys books, building library collections for the University of Toronto Libraries, which sounds like a dream job. She travels to Paris whenever the wind is good, but currently lives with her husband, son, and collections of books in Toronto, Canada. Welcome, Eva.
thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, Barnes and Noble. And thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm so excited to chat and get to some of these amazing questions.
I know, such good questions. Thank you all
Yeah.
so much. Okay, so let's kick things off, as I often like to do, by just getting us all on the same page with the book. Will you, without revealing any spoilers, because we're going to keep this conversation spoiler-free, which might be the hardest part of this conversation. Let's be real. Will you just tell us about 640 to Montreal?
Sure thing. Yeah, it follows Agatha, who is a writer of mystery novels, and she's had a best-selling novel. And coming off that success, she's tasked with writing her next book, and she has some writer's block. So her husband buys her a ticket on the train from Toronto to Montreal and back again all in one day as a sort of self-styled writer's retreat, because the Wi-Fi on that train is famously bad. So it's a good place to buckle down and get some work done. And she gets on the train a few days after Christmas. There's a massive snowstorm. The train gets stuck on the tracks between Toronto and Montreal. And really shortly after the train gets stuck, they find that one of the people in the business cabin has died. The murder has to be amongst them, and now they're trapped in the woods in the snow. They have a murder in the car. So it's a really classic locked room mystery setup, but modernized and with some great surprises along the way.
And can I just say, for the record, even though I've shouted this to Eva before, I love it so much. It is the perfect book for this season as it's starting to get cold. It's so delicious. It's got wintry vibes. It's just everything. So if you haven't picked it up, yes, do so. So I want to know where the seed for this book came from. What was the inspiration?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
there is actually, oh, somebody just said in the chat. So there is actually a Canadian children's book writer named Kenneth Opel. And I must have read on Twitter or something that once a month he does this very thing. He takes a train from Toronto to Montreal and back again as a retreat. Because I used to travel that route for work, I knew about the terrible Wi-Fi. I have like a scrolling habit. So I thought, oh, this will be perfect. It'll be a great place to buckle down and get some work done. So I booked a ticket for myself for a couple days after Christmas. And a day, I think, before I was set to travel, there was a terrible snowstorm. And that train did get stuck on the tracks and was stuck there for something like 18 hours at outside of a small town called Coburg. They ran out of food. The toilets overflowed. Don't worry, that doesn't happen in my book. I wouldn't go there. Um, and eventually, the people who were on the train literally busted themselves out and just said, you know what, we'll chance it in the snow. And
Oh my God.
so I thought that was such a crazy story. I did get on the train on my ticketed day. They had sort of restored everything, but I couldn't help but think about what would happen if this train got stuck too. I was really like suspiciously looking around
Yes.
the people, the people who were on the train, being like, "Well, what would happen if I got not just stuck, but stuck with this group of people?"
Yes.
And so when I came home that night, I really had the story sketched out. My husband was waiting for me because he had been really worried that my train would get stuck too. And we sat at our kitchen counter and had a drink, and we really sketched out the beginnings of the story that very night. Like we knew who the killer was going to be, who the victim was going to be, what it would look like. The murder weapon took us a couple of weeks longer. And we kept
Yeah.
talking about it, in the car and at breakfast. My son was like 5 at the time. He was like, "Stop talking about murder." Uh,
Be like, sorry, honey, this is what you signed up for.
Yeah, exactly. It was really like it was the inspiration was from that very train route. I've romanticized
Wow.
trains, small child that way. So yeah,
Oh my
taking the
God.
inspired.
That is so cool and is giving me I first of all, like kudos to you for getting on that train and even after like hearing that there was a very real chance that that could happen to you. That is absolutely amazing. And as a Texan, I'm also like trying to picture snow as a concept and just that much snow. Okay, but perfectly, this is like a perfect segue to this next question that I want to ask you about the people. Because, you're saying you're looking around at the cast of characters that's on that train with you and thinking like, these would be the people that I would be stuck with. So, the most important character in this book is, of course, our protagonist, our narrator, Agatha. And Agatha, I have to say, I found her so deliciously slippery and hard to read, which I love in a protagonist and a narrator. And I watched the movie Anatomy of a Fall right coincidentally right before reading 640 to Montreal. So yeah, hopefully our folks in the audience, some of you have seen Anatomy of a Fall, it was like up for Oscars and everything last year. And so
Also, a snowy film.
yes, snowy film, wintry murder. It's like the vibes are vibing. I saw so many parallels between Agatha,
Yes.
your protagonist, and the main character in Anatomy of a Fall. And so I was thrilled to see in your acknowledgments you shout out Anatomy of a Fall as a great companion movie. So for everyone planning book clubs around 640 to Montreal, take notes. That would be a good companion. So tell us about who Agatha, this character we spend so much time in her head. Who is she, and why is she boarding this train to Montreal?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So like I said, she's a writer and she's had this creative success, but is now having the sort of anxious moment after a creative success and grappling with what to do next and how to write something that's gonna live up to those expectations. But there are other things going on in her life too. Um, she stopped working, this creative success has allowed her to stop working. And I mean, this isn't sort of explicit in the book, but it is in my mind that she's sort of like bumming around the house doing nothing all day because
Yeah.
about writing and like the pressure is killing her. She's a spouse, she's a parent, and that's a really important part of her identity because as this is all happening, she's also just being diagnosed with an incurable form of cancer. And she's in this sort of weird stage in her life where, she's having treatment. She mostly feels okay most of the time, but she knows she's not going to get to watch her child grow up. And
Mm.
it's all sort of driving her crazy. So, in a sense, it's about grief. No one has died yet, but it's about, the grieving something you're never going to get to have and what that does to her mind. And I think that was a really important aspect of the character for me because I had like, listen, I grew up on the character on the movie Stepmom. Do you remember Stepmom with
Oh
Susan
my
Sarandon?
God, yes.
Yeah, a deep cut.
Julia
Um,
Roberts and
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Susan Sarandon. Am
Susan
I getting this
Sarandon.
right? Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
And I
Oh,
think that is how we depict someone like Susan Sarandon's, how we depict someone with an incurable cancer. They're like an angel almost. They're like perfect. This is the person that like, Julia Roberts of all people can't live up to. But I think that that's a little bit unfair. And I think that someone in that situation would actually be like messy and terrified and not know what to do and maybe not be like the best parent to her child. Like in this moment in her life, she's not being a great parent to her child because she's like losing her mind a little bit about this thing that's happening. So I wanted to wrap all that up in a character, and I think that that's really what drives her. She knows she's not going to live a long life, so it's important. Like this book, it's not just that she has to write another book; she has to write a book now, or she's never
mhm.
going to get to write anything else. She's freaking out that her husband can't figure out how to sign their kid up for swimming lessons. She's like, well, then he's going to drown. She's not necessarily being logical. And I think being in that frame of mind maybe drives how she reacts to the things that are happening on the train.
Oh my God. I like that. It was so beautiful, like your exploration of anticipatory grief and just thinking about all of that was not only just very profound, but it also you're creating these extra constraints on this character, this piling, we writers have these ways of piling the pressure
Yeah.
on. And that was so wonderful. I was going to ask you about what drew you to writing a character like Agatha, who is this woman with so many complicated layers, struggling with all of these issues. But I think to some extent you answered that in that it's kind of serving the purpose of creating a more realistic or fleshed out version
Yeah.
of a character like that. So I want to talk a little bit about her coping methods without adding any spoilers to this conversation. I think it's safe to say that some of Agatha's coping methods, while readers can probably relate to the struggle of the, mental overload, they may not, they may judge her for some of her coping
Yep.
methods. So
Yep.
talk to me, we're in the realm of, not unlikable female characters, but thorny, complicated. So talk
Yeah.
to me about like writing a character like that.
I think so. Yeah. Without going specifically into
Yeah.
what she does, I would say that she as a character engages in some self-destructive and unhealthy behavior as a coping method. And I think that was part of I'm glad that you like that. I do like to get into my Goodreads reviews sometimes. I'm
No, walk
curious,
away.
and I have seen people have like really negative reactions to some of her behaviors. And I'm kind of
Mhm.
like, well, what would you have this woman do?
Yeah.
Like, what would you have her do? She's literally like, I had a very close friend whose husband passed away when she was pregnant with our first child.
Hmm.
And then she went through the pregnancy and had the child and had like a really great support system. Like if this was ever going to happen to anyone, she had a really great support system. But she also like after her child was born was like drinking way too much, was
Mhm.
like partying way too much, and like do I like judge that person for that? No, that was I we like you help her and you provide her support and eventually like with enough therapy that person get gets into a healthier place, but like grief makes you crazy. And
Mhm.
so I think it's important to show that and to show that like we're not all Susan Sarandon and stepmom.
Yeah.
And and like this is like within, I think, the spectrum of normal behavior. I think the character stops herself before getting to like the least healthy version of that behavior. Like she talks about the fact that she'd been drinking quite a bit. She's not an alcoholic. She's like, I was drinking and then I was like waking up feeling lousy. So I guess I can't drink anymore.
Yes. Yeah, the
Um,
gentlest version of
yeah,
that.
be gentlest. I think
Yeah.
like again, going into spoilers, I think with some of the other behaviors, she's probably not going to go all the way, she's not going to walk off the cliff, so to speak, but she is going to like go and stand on the edge of the cliff and look
Mhm.
down and say like, well, maybe can I feel something that's not grief? Just give me another emotion.
Mm.
That's not grief. And I think that that's why people engage in those behaviors, because maybe you wake up feeling like terribly hungover, or maybe you feel guilty, or maybe you feel something, but at least that's not grief. Like at least it's different, even if it's not good.
I found that to be such a powerful part of the book. One, I think as readers, it's really cathartic to read characters who are struggling with things like that. And, whether you see yourself 100% mapped onto that character or not, there's going to be something that you can relate to,
Yeah.
sometime in your life. So I think that
Yeah.
makes her Agatha just so, so relatable. And two, we're gonna get to this, the Agatha Christie of it all and the tradition
Yeah.
that you're writing within, but the unreliable narrator, having Agatha not be a perfect angel. Like there's a reason Stepmothers was a family drama, a feel-good family
Yeah.
drama, and we're here in a murder mystery, so
Yeah.
Agatha has got to make the reader say, wait a second, what is she capable of?
Exactly.
Just the way we do with our whole cast of characters. So
Yeah.
turning to that tradition, you name checked this earlier, so I want to return to it, but you are so brilliant at writing locked room mysteries. A huge favorite with readers I know, a huge favorite with me. In your previous books, these settings are often bookish locked rooms, libraries and other spaces. But here in 640 to Montreal, we are in this snowy train. So, talk to us about making the leap, but also like the beauty of writing a locked room mystery in a train.
Yeah, I like locked room as a format generally, like before
Yeah.
we get on because I like a constraint. I think that a constraint can be really creatively satisfying. So whether that's of format, writing in a writing in the first person, for example, is a constraint because you can only write what the narrator is seeing, and that can sometimes be really tricky. Writing a locked room is a constraint. You can only deal with a handful of people who are on the train, and you have to make them interesting enough that just
Mhm.
staying with them for this period of time is going to be enough for the reader. This also all takes place over one train ride. Like that is a constraint. So you have to find ways to like fill all those minutes really. And like if you were taking a regular train ride from Toronto to Montreal, there would be kind of down moments where you're not doing anything. They're not particularly interesting. So you have to find enough to fill those minutes. I did really like writing in the library setting. I spend a lot of time in libraries. It's my professional life. Readers love libraries. They love to read about libraries. But there's only so many times that you can go back to that well. The train I thought was like I think I said this at the beginning. I am a 2-year-old boy who loves trains so much. It's my favorite form of transportation. I wish we had more of them in North America.
Yeah.
It's just like a lovely way. It's the perfect pace of travel. So it's a space that I really liked, but also a place that how much time do you spend thinking about trains? Like I'd taken that route so many times until I drafted this book and thought, oh, okay, I actually need to like go do some research. And I took the train a couple more times then. There was a lot that I just wasn't paying attention to in terms of the rhythms, what the staff were doing, and things like that. So I think it's a great setting for a story for a story like this. I think there's another book that I can't remember the name of, but it was a great luxury mystery set on a plane that was written
Ooh.
by someone who I think had used to be a flight
Oh
attendant.
yeah, yeah. TJ Newman.
Yeah,
She
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Um,
I know, yeah, okay. The titles are escaping me. I don't know why, but I remember the author, TJ Newman.
yeah, there you go. Everyone go
Yeah.
look up TV Newman. But I think, the trade to when I was writing those library mysteries, I think those were really good. But at a certain point, the group of people that you assemble is like pretty homogenous because they're all
Yeah.
people who would work in a library. So even if they might be like different ages or different, um, different races. They're all like socioeconomically like pretty similar, same level of education. They also see each other every day. There is something I think weirdly intimate about travel, whether it's on a train or a plane. Like I was supposed to be at a Barnes and Noble yesterday, actually in New Jersey. I didn't make it because of air traffic control
Oh
staffing
wow.
restrictions, and I spent probably like 14 hours in airports yesterday but like that's so intimate because it was me and like the same people are like kind of halfway disrobing because it was weirdly hot at Newark airport. You're eating like three meals there. You're sort of, these are total strangers. We're here for like you were visiting your girlfriend in New York and you're going home to university. You are coming home from there was a guy who was coming home from like a sea crossing across the Atlantic. Like everyone's assembled for really different reasons. And then, but we all like are spending this time together. We would never be together if not for this journey. And so I think the train was good for that. Like you have a mother and a son, you have a man who's traveling alone, you have a kind of like richer guy who's going through a divorce. You're kind of gathering these people together. And I like that idea that when you
That
write a
is such a
literature
good point.
mystery in a setting like that, it's almost like you're reaching into the bag of characters and picking them at random and then having to make them relate to one another.
I love that so much and had never thought of that point about the way that the train setting lets you just pick your characters. So how did you choose your characters and develop them? Like, how did you map them out and decide who was going to be on this train?
Yeah, that's really the fun of the Locked Room
Yeah.
format. Some of that you do have to go back to the Agatha Christie. Well, her Locked Room mysteries, whether we're on a boat or a train or where we are, they are to an extent like a little bit formulaic. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in the same way as like there's great creative freedom and constraint. So her, you do usually have someone very rich and unlikable. And
Mhm.
that is often the person who dies. So, you needed one of those. You need someone who's working in service. In this case, it's the train attendant. That's like practically you would just have a train attendant. But also, it's useful for there to be someone who's sort of like, socioeconomically a little bit different from the rest of the characters on the train. I thought the mother and son was important because you need people who have like a really deep relationship with one another that's sometimes strained, or like what is more strained than like a teenager and their relationship with a
Exactly.
parent. So it's like a kind of like love hate. They're obviously going to like really protect each other, but they'll be a little bit strained. And then my favorite character in the book is the character of Cyan Candel, who's a wannabe yoga influencer who's on this train, who actually has a little bit of a connection to Agatha. And I think that if Agatha Christie were writing today, she would probably write a character like Cyan Candel. She's like a little bit of a grifter. She's not actually all that great at what she does, but she thinks that she should be well compensated for it. She's married into like a little bit of money, so she doesn't need to have a real job, but she wants fame, so she's going after this. Like I think Agatha Christie would respond to a character like this. So I tried to think of like, well, what's the modern version of like a snake oil salesman almost?
Yes.
And having them on the train, I think adds some dramatic interest.
I love that so much, and you're making me think like Agatha Christie would have so many influencers in her in her books that she's writing today.
Yeah, she would have deep opinions with them, I think.
I also love Cyan, and I could tell that you did. It's because she has so many epic remarks, like one-liners, just
Yeah.
like making me laugh the entire time. Okay, I'm gonna wrap things up by just asking you, even though I could ask you a million more questions, and like it's so fascinating to hear you talk about Agatha Christie's formula and how you were thinking, you were being so thoughtful about kind of doing your own version of that, but looking to tradition. So I love that so much. But before we turn over to our amazing audience questions, I just want to ask you a very fun question about inventing ways to die, which you mentioned the fun parts of being a mystery writer. I think that falls in that category.
Yeah.
And there are some amazing ways to die in this book that you've captured
Yeah.
and given to us. So I want to ask you, how do you come up with these like horrifically entertaining methods by which you kill off your characters? Do you have them listed in a notes app on your phone? Like,
No, I wish I did. Sometimes the way to die, like in my last book, That Night in the Library,
yeah,
the way to die is really the reason that wrote the whole book. I read an article in National Geographic about this particular way to die. I thought it was fascinating, wrote a whole book about it. In this case, it took a little bit longer and it took a little bit of research and we kind of tossed things back and forth. It's like, well, poison would be the most obvious one, but I just did poison. So you can't do that. So we kind of thought back and forth. In this case, again, without spoiling it, having a young child was really useful because young children are just kind of, they end up knowing about the weirdest stuff.
yeah.
Um,
Unexpectedly morbid.
Yeah, unexpectedly. So that came as like an unexpectedly morbid fact
Yeah,
from a child. You do sometimes, like I heard someone was saying recently about like if you inject a syringe of air into someone that can kill like into their veins, that can kill them. I
heard
was thinking
that.
a lot about that. I'm like, oh, I should like keep that in my pocket.
Yeah.
Just do want like I don't think I don't want anyone to like get shot in my books. Um, that's a very obvious way to die. That's how like so many people die in North
Yeah,
America.
conversations only thriller writers will have, right? Only mystery
Yeah,
writers will have.
yeah. I'm like, well, that
Anyone
would be
listening to this is like, what?
yeah, that would be obvious. I'm
Yeah,
like, well, I don't know. I feel like I would need way more information about what that looks like. I think that there's too many people know what that looks like,
mhm.
and I don't know what that look like. So I would necessarily write a terrible version of it. Whereas if you choose a really obscure but scientifically possible, I checked way, then
Yeah.
like, you go to the research literature and you're like, okay, this is what this would look like, and you can put it in, and then everyone walks away having learned something.
Fabulous. I love it so much. And if you are like hearing Eva speak about this and wondering like what is she referencing, you're just wait till you get to the book. You're gonna love it so much. Um, yeah, so okay. I think even though I can ask you a million more questions, I really want to give these audience questions their due. So let's turn over. And we have our first wonderful question is from Leanna, and she wants to know, what is your interesting writing quirk?
So this is one that drives the people in my life crazy. So I write all of my first drafts longhand. So I have it's moleskin gridded, not lined, because lined like the lines are too far apart. It grids, so it's small line, an extra large soft cover notebook. It's very specific. If you look, you can see like a stack of them up there that are my
Mhm.
drafts, and then a couple backup notebooks. If you write every line of that, you get like you can fit about 80,000 words in one. So I write it all longhand. I have terrible penmanship. So it's like a real problem if I were to write one and then not have a chance to type it, like no one would ever figure it out. And then, so yeah, so that's a weird quirk. And then I write, and then I type the whole thing. And then I go and do my edits. And then I retype the whole thing, like I throw out that draft and I start from scratch and I start typing again. So I think my weird quirk is like just writing the book really more times than is necessary.
My brain is rejecting this, my friend. Like I can't handle that. That's amazing and so wonderful. And I have heard other writers, maybe like two in the entire time I've been in this
Yeah,
writing game, say that, but wow.
I really like it. You know what? I handwrite a lot slower than I type. Thank
Mhm.
you to my ninth grade keyboard and teacher. I type very fast. And so I think that there is something about having to go slower. Um, that you said, like, it gives you time to reject thoughts that aren't useful, to think about a sentence
Mhm.
a little bit before you write it down. So there is something about the speed of it that I like, that it like makes it take a little bit longer.
Wow, it's incredible. Okay, I could ask you a million more questions about this, but let's turn to our next audience question. This comes from Orsair, and Orsair, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. When you're developing a story, do the characters reveal their secrets to you first, or do you start with the mystery and let your characters evolve around it? So a bit of a process question. I love it.
Yeah, I love that question. So in terms of process, I am someone who has to outline. Like I
Mhm.
get, I have a sense of like, oh, okay, if it's 40 chapters, I know like roughly like one sentence long what'll happen in every chapter. And that I do that because I think I'm like bad at plots. It's not where my mind goes immediately. I think I want to write character, like I want to explore character. It's how I want to spend all my
Yeah.
time. So if I didn't outline plot, then it would just be like people having like conversations in rooms, which I would find interesting and no one else in the world.
I'm
So
right
it,
there with you, so I would
yeah,
love it. Yeah.
so at least the story comes first, and then like the absolute delight is letting the characters develop themselves on the page. Like
Mm,
I'll have a general idea before I get started. Dorcas is a train attendant who works in the train. And like,
mhm,
what did I know about Dorcas when I got started? I knew she was probably like in her 50s, because of the name that I chose for her. Like in my mind, I'm like, okay, she's Portuguese. We're in Toronto, big Portuguese community here. Um, she's probably pretty religious, like very Catholic. And then that's all I knew about her when I started writing. And then like getting to discover those characters in the writing, like I know what I need Dorcas to do in my
mhm.
plot from my outline, but that's not the fun part of writing Dorcas. The fun part of writing Dorcas is like, in chapter, I'm making this up, 14, maybe, I don't know what chapter it's on, there's an iron burn on her skirt. It's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
like, so she was like staring off into space, like imagine, so, like getting to write those little bits into a character, I think is the real delight. And so I have a very, very high level of who they are, like basically the stuff that would be on like their Tinder profile, like very, very high level.
Yeah.
Um, and then you get to spend 80,000 words, like really thinking about them and developing them. So, yeah, so the story comes first, but only because if it didn't, then I would like never actually write the story. I would just
No,
write,
yeah. Just be
yeah,
like, all these wonderful people having these great exchanges in
yeah,
some sort of ether where nothing
yeah,
yeah, I'm right there with you. So you're a plotter and an emotional/character pantser
yeah,
almost,
yeah,
where
yeah,
the
yeah.
awesome. Okay, we have a great question from Robin who wants to know why do you choose to write in this mystery genre?
So actually, Robin, your question isn't that different from the one before, and it's because
Mm.
when I first started writing, like I always knew that I wanted to be a writer, but when I first started like writing books and like finishing writing books, they were more literary fiction, and I pitched them around a little bit, and I was told that they were too quiet, which is a very polite way of someone telling you that your work is boring and not sellable. Um, and so I think mysteries in general of lots of people are a really useful frame to hang character exploration and setting exploration on. I really like reading mysteries too, but the ones that I love are ones that are actually sneakily about like people and exploring like psychology and family and weird dynamics and personal history, but also there's like a mystery happening.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that those are the most powerful. So I think as a genre, like if you're going to write in a genre, then mysteries and thrillers really allow you to spend the most time with characters and build them out. Like because you're spending so much time thinking about motivation. Like, why would someone kill someone? That's a crazy thing to do. So if you're going to have someone kill somebody, then like you better have a really good reason for it. So it's a way for me to like almost sneakily write my little literary fiction stories. But
Yes.
they happen to be around. They
I'm
happen to
listening to this like,
be
yeah.
Yeah, and I like, when I think about what I've read, like I've, always read a lot of literary fiction, but I've always read a lot of mystery too for that reason. I think that mysteries are also a great way of exploring setting. Someone at like one of these book events, or one of the moderators once said, she started the question, she's like, "So you're a setting first writer?" She said it like it was an obvious thing. I'm like, "Am I?" And then I thought
Yeah.
about that. Oh, yeah, yeah, you know what? I think I am. And some of my favorite mysteries have been ones where, yes, there's a mystery, yes, the characters are really compelling, but you get so much about like a place. Like if I think about Clockers, it's more of like a thriller than a mystery. I think about like going into a corner store and someone buying like a Yoo-hoo. That's so when I think about the talented Mr. Ripley, I think about the Italian Sunshine. So I think that they're a really great way to deeply, deeply feel immersed in a place.
Hmm.
And I love that part of writing too. So yeah, just they're a useful frame for all the things that I like to put in books.
Yeah. Do you think of setting as a character insofar as one of your interests in writing is to kind of open that setting up and reveal like the layers and the kind of ways that it ticks the same way you would do with a person?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Like in my library set books, I think that was a really big part of it because those were
Mm,
settings I found so interesting and I mean are compelling to a reader. And the train, that's more of a challenge to do, but I loved going and exploring and being like, oh, this is more than I thought it was. And there is a rhythm to this. And with this book, like you're in the cold, and that's such an important part of it. Like the feeling of that cold, the feeling of being in a snowstorm, the feeling of like, the snow falling sideways, like that's such an important part of the setting. And you were saying you're from Texas, like that's not part of your reality.
right.
And so it is like that's such a fun way to write and to really deeply immerse a reader in like this is what this would physically feel like, look like, smell like. I think that that's so fun to do.
Yeah, the best way to travel if you can't actually be there, book.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly.
Um, and I saw someone just briefly shout out in the comments that they appreciate this Quebec set book and want more
Mhm.
Quebec set books, which I just think is very cool.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, we have great Louise Penny, who
yes,
almost
of
exclusively
course.
Quebec sent books. So I would say we're not starved. I do
Yeah.
think we need more Montreal fiction because that's one of the most interesting cities in the whole world, I think. So everyone, write your Montreal books.
Yes, I love that. Okay, Marcia wants to know, what do you do if you have writer's block? Jump on a train and like,
Yeah, so Marcia, this is maybe an infuriating answer. I would say I don't get writer's block, and there's a very good reason for this. I've only been like seriously writing, actually had books published and all that since I became a parent. Um, and so I don't get a lot of time to write. I have a full-time
yeah.
job. So I write between 5 and 6 o'clock every morning. And there's just not time. If you have writer's block, you keep typing anyway. And even if you know that the thing you're writing or typing is going to get thrown out, it doesn't matter. You just kind of keep typing anyway, and editing is part of the process. And if it's not good, I'm not terribly concerned about that because I know that I'm going to go back to it. So you keep writing, you keep typing, you just keep doing it. I think having the very real constraint of time is a gift because I try to make really good use of that time. So even if I'm writing something that I know is going to get thrown out later, there might be a nugget in there. It might help me understand a character in a way that maybe isn't explicit on the page, but is useful for later. So I think that writer's block is, yeah, it's conquerable. Like you just kind of have to keep doing it. And I think, excuse me, I didn't have
Mm,
formal training in writing, but I do remember like a ninth grade creative writing teacher who just made us do automatic writing every day. Like we would start every class for 15 minutes automatic writing, and he'd be like, okay, just write. Like you would get a sheet of paper and you would just have to write. And it didn't matter, and you didn't use it for anything, and it wasn't like what was graded, but you just had to do that. And I think that that is sort of a useful way to think about writer's block. You just kind of have to put stuff on a page and not be too worried about what that is.
I love that. And I'm joining folks in the comments who are saying how much they love that and might share that exercise with others. And it's so interesting to me that this thing that you don't experience writer's block is one of the key things that
Yeah.
is skimming Agatha, right? And part of the reason why she's on this train. So I love that. Um, and I'm seeing a lot of comments or a lot of questions in the comments about asking you what you're currently reading that you would recommend. And we've got this in our audience questions too.
Yeah, so I've very recently been on a big ton of French kick,
Love
uh,
it.
the Irish writer, and that has been, I mean, talk about immersive. Those books are so Irish and
Yes.
explore a place that I don't know anything about. I would love to go to Ireland ever since I read, Maeve Binchy's Circle of Friends when I was like 12 years old. I've always wanted to go to Ireland, but I read one of those books. I think I read The Trespasser first. I actually read it as an audiobook, which was such a treat because the narrator had the accent. Like
Mm.
what an immersive experience that was. And I enjoyed that so much that I like went back for more. Um, and yeah, have been working my way through all of them. What else am I reading right now? Oh, and I also just finished Buckeye by Patrick Ryan, which I think lots of
Ooh.
people are reading right now, which was great. And again, like set in small town Ohio. I don't know anything about Ohio. Have I been to Ohio? Maybe. Oh, yes, I've been to Columbus, but I have not been to small town Ohio. I'm not like a man in the post-war period growing up in that world, but so immersive about what it is to live in a small town. So I really, really been loving that.
I love that. And so I hope everyone Buckeye and ton of French.
The entire
Ryan
oeuvre
knows,
of
yeah,
French. Yeah,
her or just everything ton of
yeah,
French.
everything done. The
Which
Trespasser was a great book. I really like that.
what was that?
The
Sorry.
Trespasser, yeah, sorry.
Okay, Trespasser.
Trespasser was a great place to start if you're looking for a way in.
I love that. I'm seeing both in our pre-audience questions and in the comments that are popping up. And thank you everyone for asking your questions. I'm trying to keep an eye on them. Just thinking about takeaways that you want your readers to leave with after having read 640 to Montreal. And someone asked about kind of deeper themes that were on your mind that you were exploring when reading those books. So I think those things kind of dovetail.
Yeah, I think, I can't give away the last line of the book
Mhm.
because you're really not meant to do that at these sorts of things. I hope
Yeah.
you but I think the last line of the book is the key takeaway. And it's,
Mm.
you just have to live while you're alive and you can't allow yourself to become obsessed with awful outcomes and allow the things that might happen in the future to rob you of the joy in the everyday. That sounds like a really strange takeaway from a thriller sound, but like I promise it will make sense. This is a character who was Steve, and I think that this is true not only for the protagonist. You think of the character of Cyan Candel, who
Yeah.
got so obsessed with the fact that a book had stolen the story of her life. And she's like, well, now like there's no moving forward, and that's why I'm failing. It's like, no, babe, that's not why you're failing. There are lots of reasons, but it's not that. So just to like carpe diem is a little bit simplistic, but you do have to just like live in the joy of every day. And if that means like taking a big swing to get the attention of your partner, or if that means, yeah, like not allowing something like a health challenge to rob you of all the joy that's available in your life, I think that's the big takeaway. And I think that's what we see from a lot of the characters. Like they could benefit from that advice, and maybe some of them learn it in the end.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I'm nodding along just because of course I see it. Having read the book, it's
Yeah,
there so clearly. And I love that that is a through line, yet another through line that unites your characters is that need to wrestle with the sort of takeaway. So brilliantly done. And I want to ask you, so I think this is coming across to all of our audience members. Oh, really quickly, I think we had an audience member who wanted to know if Agatha, our main character, is named explicitly after Agatha Christie.
So yes and no. I do sort
Mm.
of go through life collecting names that I think are
Yes.
interesting for a character. I think that it's really helpful if your character has like a distinctive name. And I think the name Agatha is a little bit of an unsung hero. We might be coming back around to it because I think people are now naming their children kind of like granny names, for lack of a better. Well, like I'm meeting a lot of baby Hazels.
Yes, Edith's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so I think Agatha will probably come back, but I think it's like that's one of those names where if you meet an Agatha, you almost like feel like you know something about them. So I liked it for that reason. I obviously really like it for Agatha Christie. I have an Agatha in my life, just like a friend. I did ask her if it was okay if I borrowed her name. She said it was. But yeah, mostly a nod to Agatha Christie because, the locked room mystery on a train is owes such a debt to her. But I think it's also really perfect for the character because it's like distinctive and strong and to me says something about her. So it's a little bit of both. I do have a notes app file on my phone where I've like collected interesting names that I think say something about people.
I love that. I like to collect the names of readers who come to my signings because it's so
Ooh, that's a good one.
perfect because everyone writes their names on the little sticky
Yeah,
notes. And so I
yeah,
kind of, when I sign, I slyly put some of the sticky notes to the side where I'm like,
very, very, very
so
smart.
I walk away with my little collection of names. But I love that you ask the people in your lives, so much more thoughtful than our protagonist, Agatha. Um,
Well, I couldn't write this book and then steal someone's name without asking them. So yes, I asked Agatha
Too
and she
meta, yeah. I love it. And okay, I think unless someone wants to pop in a last minute question, I want to talk about something that I think is just very obvious to everyone who's listening to you speak during this chat is that humor and this sly, very funny wit just plays such a large role in your work and in this book. And I think that, that lovely wit that comes through in Agatha's narration is such a good temper to some of the uh, dark places that the book goes. So talk to us about creating that pitch perfect voice and the role that humor plays for you.
it's so important for dark books to be funny,
Yeah.
not like jokey funny. If you were trying to, set up punchline, you can't do that. But I think that if you look around you, the world is funny even when things are sad or scary. It's just a reality. And if you don't see that, I don't know. That's what a sad way to go through life to not see the sort of ridiculous humor in things. I think you have to. So I'm always looking for it. I think even in regular life, I'm just looking for things that are really funny. So whether it's, two characters who hate each other bantering back and forth, like how would these two characters insult each other? I am kind of clocking what I hear people say, and I am looking for the humorous or the ridiculous in in sort of sad or awful situations. I mean, I said this at the Barnes and Noble event that we were at in Chicago, but I think a lot about that those first couple of weeks of COVID, that I think
Mhm.
most of us will say those were the worst and scariest, some of the worst and scariest times of our lives. Our children were all of a sudden like at home and we were educating them. We all literally thought we were going to die. Like we knew so little, disinfecting our groceries. Y- Like it was so, so scary. But what I think about that time is how much of it, like how much we talked about toilet paper and how much it all came down to like, but what if we don't have enough toilet paper and we were hoarding it and like waiting in line for it and like how ridiculous. That's funny. Not like funny in a jokey way, but it's a really like that exact type of humor that like when you are worried about a mass extinction event, everyone is talking about toilet paper. Like, I think that if you're a writer, you need to think about that a lot and make sure that you're capturing that in your fiction, because that is like, how ridiculous is that? Um, yeah, I am allergic, I think, to things, to books and movies that are just fully dark and have no levity at all, because that's just not what life is like. In the most terrible times of our lives, ridiculous things still happen. Somebody farts at the wrong time. Like, it's just gonna happen. So I think that is really important to represent in fiction. And like I said, not like with a full joke, but just observe the world around you and notice how much of it is like a little bit ridiculous.
Yes, I love that. And it's such a tonic. And I think you're absolutely right. You've got me thinking back to the first few weeks of COVID, which I had sworn I had erased from my brain
Yeah,
very intentionally.
sometimes I'm like, oh, should I go there? But just
No, no, no. It's
an
perfect because
example.
I am thinking about how much, both my husband and I locked up in a house with each other, were relying on things as silly as like internet memes and people's joking. And I think that that is our ability to find the levity in darkness.
Yeah,
I think is such a redeemable part of being human.
yes,
Um,
100%.
yeah, and your book made me laugh as much as it made me like stay up late at night, turning those pages, needing to figure out what happened. So just did an amazing job.
God, thank you so much.
Thank you. And we are at our time, folks. So I want to thank you all so, so much for joining us today in this wonderful event. Thank you for being such a trooper with your voice and your throat not feeling well.
It's so
It
annoying to listen to. I'm so sorry.
not at all. We could stay here, not for you. You need to go rest, but I could have stayed listening to you for another hour. I'm sure the audience would say the same thing. Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone that 640 to Montreal is this incredible book. Look at that beauty. She is in Barnes and Nobles everywhere. She is one of the November monthly picks. So go out and find her if you don't have her already and enjoy the incredible book. Thank you so much, Eva.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your wonderful questions, Ashley, and everyone, and for just a great conversation. And thank you to Barnes& and Noble.
Thank you, Barnes& and Noble. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.